Well, hello, live stream. Welcome. Thank you for being here. We've got 10 minutes to go before we get started. So if you're watching this on the replay, you can fast forward about 10 minutes or just hang out for the pre-show, which is what we're doing right now, making sure that recordings are going. They are. I have two recordings that are going here locally. I have one recording that is going on the YouTube, on the cloud. That's working nicely. I have not gone through camera checks yet, so we could do that. Hi. There's camera one. There is the bird cam. Camera three. Let's put me in camera three, because there we go. There's camera three. And let's put me in camera four. There we go, camera four. So all of this is working. Let's take me out of the camera for that camera. Okay. See, it's all working. Take me out of that camera too. All right. We have All Security Plus today. I didn't mention that. This is the Security Plus study group. So it's all Security Plus questions for you today. I've got one already waiting for you at professormesser.com/QA. You can pop open a new browser window and go there. We can put our phone over here. Maybe even plug it in so we get the added bonus of power once we're done here. That would be nice. Hello, New York, New York. Town so nice they named it twice. I was planning on a trip to New York City shortly. I was thinking about that. And then the plans fell through. So I gotta find another good reason to go. I don't know why I need a reason. I could just go. So that would be good. Oh, you passed Network Plus. Congratulations. Excellent. Welcome back for Security Plus. This one is always a good one. I like the Security Plus certification. It is a good jumping off point to the rest of IT security, or whatever they're calling security these days. I can't keep up. It's whatever the marketing people decide to call it, I guess. I'll call it whatever they'd like, as long as they keep doing security. Welcome, India. Welcome, Maryland. My Maryland. They are back. We should probably get things looking right here. Analytics are fine. So let's pop over to an actual presentation, shall we? There we go. Does that work? Yes, it does. Wow, we're actually ready to do something here. Thank you for being here. Hello, Suffolk, Virginia. Fourth time the charm. Well, you've had to go through a couple of staggering defeats there, have you? I've been in the same position of having to take a certification exam a third time, and I did not enjoy that. Did not like the failing part of it, but I like the passing part at the end. Destin's here. Destin, Florida, just down the street, so to speak. Out on 30A. Thanks for being here. Orlando's here. Welcome. Hobbs is here. That New Mexico? That's great. There's All Security today. I wrote these questions about a month ago. Actually, over a month ago. I was doing a lot of traveling this month, and so I did everything, all of my pop quizzes, all of my study groups. I did everything beforehand. So this is the last thing that I had created a month ago, and I don't remember any of it. I looked through the questions earlier so I could remember. What was it I asked again? Just so. Mexico, welcome. Sacramento is here. Dayton, Ohio. Welcome, Dayton. You guys got bad weather there a couple months ago, didn't you? That was a bad thing that rolled through there. Hope everything's okay now. San Diego is here. Welcome for your renewal for Security Plus. Are you going to take the Cert Master CE for renewal? That's what all the cool kids are doing these days. Takes a couple of hours, it seems, and you're renewed for 3 years. So amazing. If you haven't heard about that, it's the Cert Master CE. That's the name of the product if you are renewing. See, probably Cert Master. Very good. That Cert Master CE is it's almost too easy. They almost now have made it so easy to renew. Well, I think they needed to, because all they really needed to do was make sure that you were still up to date with everything. They ask you the right questions on the CertMaster CE, so that's always good. DFW is here. Welcome. Manhattan, Kansas, smack dab in the middle. Thanks for being here. Austin is here. Lots of Texas checking in. New York is still here. New York's here again. New York's here again. Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Nice area. We've got Argentina. DC, welcome. Benton is here. Nice to have Arkansas here again. Texas is the best country in the USA. So says Guy in the chat room. It's hard to argue with that, isn't it? Fort Collins, Colorado. Talk about standards. That's where you should be. How are we doing on time? Calling where everyone lives and have to remember that we have 4 minutes until we get started. I used to have a clock up on the screen. I need to get one that kind of sits over here. That's just always there for the study group. And I'm not sure how I'm getting PMs in here. I got to clean things up on here. Welcome, London. London. Well, we're glad you're here live. Lewiston, Maine is here. Would you believe I was in Camden last week? That was pretty awesome. That was pretty great to be in summer in Maine. Highly recommend it. Especially if you like 65 and 70 degree weather versus the 99 degree weather that I'm sitting in now back in Florida. So that's always good. That's how it goes, I guess. Charlotte checking in. Raymore, Missouri. We've got a nice smattering from East Coast and some on the west, creeping over the west. I realize it's a little early on the west side. Some folks were saying, why do I make this at noon Eastern time? Well, first, the reason is that there's no time that works for everyone. So I've just become accustomed to that particular thing. But this way I can get early morning. I say early morning, 8 o'clock in the morning. That's 8 or 9 early morning on the West Coast. But I can also get Europe. So folks over that are in the UK that would like, or Scotland or Ireland that would like to attend, or anywhere else in Europe, you can kind of get the end of the day there. So it works out pretty well to do it at noon. The reason it's on a weekday, we used to do these on weekends. We used to do them on Saturdays. And that's because I had a job during the week. And so that was the only time I had available. Well, now I can do it during the week, which is nice. So I can have the weekend to do other things, which is nice. Welcome, Philly. Sierra Vista. Rocky Mountains are here. Greensboro is here. A couple North Carolinas checking in there real quick. Thank you for being here. Austin here again. Ohio. Haven't been up to Ohio lately. I need to get up there again. San Diego. Aberdeen. Maryland. St. Louis. Stanley Cup champs. Has to kind of rub it in there. That's fresh. You got to make sure you get that in there at least for another month or so. Kentucky, Maine again. All these Maine folks. Had I known, we would have done a get-together in Portland or in Camden. There was certainly enough beer going on in Camden that we could have done a get-together. I just needed other people there. We got about a minute until we get started. Got to get things together here, including my voice. I don't know what's going on with my voice today. We're going to figure this out. We will struggle through. Thank you for bearing with me. And people are familiar with getting CEs from these study groups. I'll explain in just a moment how you do that. How you can, technically you don't need anything from me to earn a continuing education unit credit by watching this. You just say that you did, and CompTIA will take your word for it. But I will send you an email, and I'll explain how that works to prove that you were here in case you're audited. I guess that'd be the reason for doing that. There's Lauderdale. Welcome. Haven't been down to 595 in a while, or I-95, or I-75, or driving around there in a while. It's been a bit since I've been down to Plantation. We've got to Got to get a few things together here, but we're just about ready to go. It is the top of the hour. You know what I didn't check is to check if the main graphic was working. So we're about to find out. Here we go, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the June 2019 Professor Messer Security Plus Study Group, coming to you live from the world headquarters here in Tallahassee, Florida. My name is James Messer, and I will be your host for this next hour of Security Plus related questions and answers. I'll ask the questions here, and you, as you're watching live, will be able to get those answers from me. We'll all be in this together. It'll be a great thing to go through. You're going to love it. I promise. We've got so many different things to talk about today with Security Plus. This is a certification that for some reason tends to keep growing and growing and growing. I think it's probably because in the industry, we keep having all of these security issues. It's a good place to be in IT right now, is on the security side. We're able to do this study group thanks to your ongoing support. As you're probably aware, every minute of every one of my training videos is available to watch for free on the internet. And some people speculated in this last month that that's going to change. That's never going to change. All of my courses will always be free to watch online. That's part of the deal. So I have absolutely no plans in changing that. I think it's a great thing. We are able to do these study groups, though, thanks to your ongoing support of this. If you want an offline version of the courses, you can check that out at professormesser.com/getsecplus. I have video versions of the course. I have audio versions of the course you can listen to in your car. You can buy them together as a bundle, and if you do, I'll even give you my course notes for free. We'll talk about the course notes in just a bit. There is plenty going on with Security Plus. There's a lot of things I'm working on right now that are specific to Security Plus you don't even see happening. In a few months, you'll be able to see even more things going on with Security Plus, so I'm happy to have the opportunity to do that. If you like watching these live streams, you may want an audio replay version of these, and you may want it to be automatically downloaded to your podcasting program, or you just want a link that you can go back through the archives and listen in. You can find that link at professormesser.com/podcast, or if you happen to be on one of your favorite podcasting sites, if you're on the Google Podcasts or Apple Podcasts, just search for my name. You'll find it there as well. Those are always available for you to find. There's plenty on the video replay side as well. Some of you like watching the video replay. For some reason, this doesn't bother you, so you're able to watch the video replay. One of the nice things about this, about a day or so after we're done, my marketing manager, Lori, goes through and watches the video and puts timestamps into the YouTube description. So if you look at the video description on YouTube, you can click on one of those timestamps and go directly to those. So that's kind of nice to have as well. So if you're looking for a particular question, or on the replay, you would just like to move along a little quicker through the video, you can do that just by clicking the timestamp. Thank you, Lori, for doing that. Everybody in the chat room loves that. I get emails all the time that you're taking advantage of that. So we're more than happy to do that for you. Let's talk about the Security Plus exam. If you're planning to take this exam, it is one single exam you have to take to earn your Security Plus certification. The current version of this exam is called the SY0501. I don't know why they make it so complicated, but that's the name of it. Anyway, it was released on October the 4th, 2017. Usually these exams are good for about 3 years, so we got plenty of time before you would ever have to worry about seeing another updated version of the exam show up somewhere. So that part is great. We don't have to worry about all of those details. We've got plenty to talk about on the exam as well, with the number of questions, because right now in the exam, you could get as many as 90 questions on the exam. People are telling me, though, I don't quite get 90 questions. You might get fewer than that. So don't worry if you're looking at the exam and you don't see 90. The 90 is just the maximum number. This question and answer on the exam is expecting you to get a passing score of 750. But notice the scale is between 100 and 900. Again, it's an odd scale. It's just a way that CompTIA manages the way that they grade the exam. Don't worry about those details too much. Just worry about doing as well as you can on the exam. The grade will work itself out in the end. Another important consideration, and we're going to talk about that in this as well, is that the exam is a multiple choice exam for the most part, but you could possibly get questions that are not multiple choice exam questions. They are performance-based questions. CompTIA calls a performance-based question anything That is not multiple choice. So you could get a fill in the blank question. You could get a matching question. It might be a drag and drop question. They might ask you to put things in a particular order. So you never know exactly what you're going to get. These performance-based questions tend to be the first handful of questions on the exam. So if you're in 2 or 3 or 4 questions and you're noticing these are very involved questions that I have to go through a lot of dragging and dropping and matching and doing different things, don't worry. You will get to the multiple choice questions in just a moment. So that's one that you don't have to worry too much about is the performance-based questions. They are still asking the same information from the same exam objectives that you've gotten for all of the other questions on the exam. Make sure you get your hands on those exam objectives. You can find them at professormesser.com/objectives, or you can search for them on Google. Just look for the CompTIA exam objectives, and you'll be able to download those. Everything we do today will come directly from those exam objectives, and most things on the exam, practically all of the exam, comes directly from the exam objectives. So it's a great study guide to go with. Today we're going to do Q&A though, and this is live Q&A that you can participate. You can answer, and we'll see your answers coming through on my side thanks to the magic of the internet. The way that you can participate is to pop open a new browser window and go to professormesser.com/QA. That will allow you to answer the questions. In fact, there's a question waiting for you there right now. If you were able to see that on your screen, have a look at what's available there. If you don't have a way to pop open a new browser window, or you would like to use an app on your mobile device to be able to answer these questions, you can download the Socrative student app from your favorite app store. It may ask you for a room name. It will ask you for a room name, and that room name is Professor Messer, ProfessorMesser. Make sure you spell it right, or you won't be anywhere in the right place. You won't see any questions at all. In fact, the questions that's there, whenever you happen to look at the question, is a question from last month. We call this our rewind question, just to see if you're able to get in and answer the question. And the question that's there asks, which data label would be most associated with patient records from a medical doctor? What data label would be most associated with patient records from a medical doctor? And your options are PII, NDA, PCI, PHI, and DSS. You've got 5 different options there to choose from. In these 5 different options, you can see people are answering this right now. We've got a number of folks that have locked in their answer, and you can see that 79% of you have chosen DPHI. So make sure that if you're looking at this on the screen, you would like to answer this, please don't answer in the chat room. You want to go to that link at professormesser.com/QA, and you'll be able to answer, lock in your answer, and we can see what you thought the answer happened to be. You'll notice the 19%, 18% said PII. So there is that as well. Make sure you go through and have a look at the different options that are here. These data types are pretty useful and important to know about. There are different data types you run into depending on the type of organization you are, the type of department that you happen to be dealing with. It depends on what you may find. There may be proprietary details that you need to know about. PII is personally identifiable information. And sometimes some of the information that you would get from a medical physician might be PII, which might be a name, a date of birth, mother's maiden name, biometric information. Those are certainly things that can be tied back to you. But if we're talking about specifically a medical doctor, then you will find questions like this one that are talking about PHI. This is protected health information. This is specifically healthcare details, which of course are extremely private and personal information. So if you're working with healthcare, with insurance, with anything relating to anything dealing with health, you'll probably be dealing with both PHI and PII. Now, this question, of course, sounded like it could have both of these. It could be both PII and PHI, but the question specifically asked, which data label would be most associated with patient records from a medical doctor? And in that particular case, the only option here that is most associated with that is the PHI, the 78%. So hopefully that's a question you remembered from last month. Hopefully you were able to get into the Q&A and answer the questions and work through all of those pieces. Let's do some new questions, though. Let's start off with a new question on the Security Plus Q&A today that is going to be a performance-based question. I mentioned earlier that at the beginning of your exam, you will get a handful of performance-based questions. These are questions that are not multiple choice. They are anything but multiple choice. So make sure as we're going through this and looking at these questions and the answers, we keep an eye on this. The first question of every study group is a performance-based question. So if you want to go back over the last year of Security Plus videos, every single one of those, the first question is always going to be a performance-based question that might help you with things that you're doing on your exam. Here is your performance-based question of the month, and it is asking questions. It's a fill in the blank on your side, but the question asks, match the following data states to the type. Each state is associated with two of these data types. So I've got three of these data states. One is data in transit, one is data in use, and one is data at rest. Now, if you're already wondering what those things are, you may be at a disadvantage for this particular question. Those are three data states: data in transit, data in use, and data at rest. And then I have 6 different states that we can look at, or types associated with these states. So let's talk about these 6 different circumstances that we would correlate back to these data states. The first is evaluate the checksum of a credit card number. The other one is SNMP response from a database server. The third one is encrypted fields of a SQL database. The fourth is spreadsheet file with customer contact information. The fifth is a NAT occurring between the internal network and the external network. And the last is create the digital signature of an email message. Those are the 6 different data types. Now, if you think you know what the answers are, you don't want to put anything in the chat room. You don't want to put any hints in the chat room. You instead want to go to the link that's right there at the bottom of the page, professormesser.com/QA. This is a fill in the blank. So I tried to make it so you could match these together very easily instead of typing a lot of things out. If you think they are all in the right orders and there are 2 with each data type, it would be 1 A and B, 2 C and D, and 3 E and F. But that's not the answer. It's not even a hint. They are absolutely not in the order that I have them on the screen. So for those of you listening on the podcast, let's go through it one more time so you can hear these. We're talking about data in transit, data in use, and data at rest. We're matching 2 of these different circumstances to those data states. So pick 2 and lock them into one of these. Each one of them has 2. So I tried to even it up, make it at least a little simpler for you to do some matching. The first is evaluate the checksum of a credit card number. The second is an SNMP response from a database server. The third is encrypted fields of a SQL database. The fourth is a spreadsheet file with customer contact information. The fifth is NAT occurring between the internal network and the external network. And the last is to create the digital signature of an email message. Hopefully, I can see a lot of you working on this one. Suddenly, everybody's trying to figure out which 2 of these I need to pair up with each data type. So hopefully you were able to piece these together. You may even be able to move these around depending on how everything's falling in. So if 3 of these are matching up to one of these, you know you've done something wrong because we weren't talking about 3 of them. We're matching them up with 2. So we'll have to figure out if that's what really happened with all of these. Well, the important part of this, of course, is that you understand these data types: the data in use, the data at rest, and the data in transit. So that's pretty important to consider what we think that might be. Hopefully it's one of those that when you're working through figuring these out, you're actually figuring out what could it be? What could we deal with in this scenario that would cause this to be in those different data types? Hopefully you're familiar with one of these things. And we will have a look at these. Let's step through these. We're having a number of people put their answers in. It's a slow go. You're not going to be able to Google this one. So a lot of you are trying to figure out the details as you're going through it. I think some of you, scanning through these because it's a fill in the blank. I don't have a way to quickly summarize the answers for this one, but I do see that indeed you're doing pretty good. Doing pretty good with the answers that are coming in with this one. Let's see how well you did. Let's step through each one of these different data states and the data types that we have here and see what we have. Let's start with the first one that's here, which is data in transit. So we have two of these that we need to choose to be data in transit. Data in transit would be data that is currently moving from place to place. Generally, we think of data in transit as being data in transit over the network. You can almost add that on to the end of this. So if any of this is going across the network, it is data in transit. That means that things like an SNMP response from a database server is certainly data in transit. It's coming across the network. And the second one, since we're talking about networks, this one should jump right out at you now, which is the NAT that's occurring, the network address translation that's occurring between the internal network and, that should say, the external network. It fell off the edge of the screen there, didn't it? But so the answers B and E correlate to data in transit. Hopefully you were able to piece together those two and associate them with data in transit. The next on our list is data at use. Data at use or in use. Data at use and data in use. I kind of messed up the at use and in rest, didn't I? It's data in use and data at rest. I love typing things in wrong, but it's live, people. We're leaving it in. I'm proud of it. I'm not proud of it, but we're going with it. Data in use. Data in use would be data that's currently in memory and it's doing things. We're currently doing calculations with it. We're currently doing things with it in memory. We're evaluating it. We're looking at it. We're doing something associated with that. So if we're looking at those scenarios, we know that data in use would be evaluating the checksum of a credit card number. Maybe many of you may not even realize that credit card numbers have checksums. The number is just not a bunch of random numbers. There actually is a way to evaluate the number and determine if it is a valid credit card number. And in fact, you can even determine whose credit card it happens to be. Is it an American Express? Is it a Visa? Is it a MasterCard? There's certainly ways to make that work. So the way that you would evaluate that checksum is to run it through an algorithm that tells you if the checksum is correct. We're evaluating it. We have it in memory. We're working with it. Therefore, it's data in use. We are actively using it in memory. And the other option here that would be data in use is F, create the digital signature of an email message. So if we're looking at an email message, we need to build out a digital signature. We need to evaluate the information that's in that particular email. We need to create the digital signature and run the algorithm. All of that's happening in memory. All of that's happening as it's executing on the machine. That is data that we are actively using. It is data in use. Well, now we're down to the last two. It should be relatively obvious now which two of these would be data at rest. Data at rest is data that we have stored on a storage device. So it's data that's on disk. It's data that's on an optical drive. It's data that we've stored in the cloud, but it's sitting there. We're not doing anything with it. It's not being evaluated. We're not creating digital signatures from it. It's just sitting somewhere. We're not even using it at the moment. It's resting. It's data at rest. And the last two that we haven't chosen is C, encrypted fields of a SQL database. Well, those encrypted fields are sitting there in the database, and we're pretty good in that particular case that those fields are just sitting there and not doing anything associated with that. So there is also in this list, the only other option that's here, a spreadsheet with customer contact information. The spreadsheet's just sitting there. It's on the drive. It's not doing anything. It's just sitting there and waiting for us to take advantage of it. It's not something that's actively in use. We're not doing anything with this data. It is data at rest. And so those are your 5 options. Data in transit would be the SNMP response from a database server and the network address translation occurring between the internal network and the external network. We've got data in use, which would be evaluating the checksum of a credit card number and creating the digital signature of an email message. And lastly, data at rest, which would be the encrypted fields of a SQL database and the spreadsheet file with customer contact information. Hopefully, you were able to have a look at those and figure out the details. If you're not familiar with data in transit, data in use, data at rest, you need to have a look through those. Those are pretty important for figuring out those details. Whenever I start looking at all of the things associated with where do I find these details, they are all in the exam objectives. So make sure you go out and get a copy of those exam objectives incredibly important because it will help you understand the things you need to know before you get into your exam and be able to work through those. So be familiar with what all of those different options are. They are well mentioned. They are certainly documented in those exam objectives. Let's do another question. I've got one. We're going to click next here on my screen just so you can see that it's here. And I have a different question on my screen than you have on your screen. This is what happens when you go away for a little bit and trying to figure out the details of what you've been working through with all of the different. Now I found it. There it is. I've got the answer. Here's the question on your screen and the question on my screen, which is, on which of the following would you most likely find an SOC? On which of the following would you most likely find an SOC? Let's see if I can determine on which of the following would be most likely to find an SOC. Let's go through each of these options. Is it SCADA? Is it load balancer? Is it media player? Is it firewall? Or is it database server? Those are your 5 different options. This is one you're going to have to think about a little bit, I think. I had to think about this one because I wrote it a month ago and forgot it completely. If you think you know what the answer is, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Please don't put your answer in the chat room or any hints there as well. So on which of the following would you most likely find an SOC? Is it SCADA, load balancer, media player, firewall, or database server? Hopefully you're familiar with that odd term. We're not going to discuss what the term is. That's part of the fun of figuring out the details. This is a bit of a guess if you need to figure out those, working through those details. I'm going to see, since nothing was sort of in the order I thought it was, maybe I just didn't delete some things I didn't know was there. Hopefully we're up to date on my side of the screen. Otherwise, it'd be a lot of fun, wouldn't it? To figure out the details, to break down all of this. We're going to be hopping around to different slides the whole time. That'll be fun. We'll have to figure out the details of that. Hopefully you're familiar with this. An SOC. What is that thing? Now, this is the point where everyone's Googling. So don't Google. Take a guess. Take a stab. Hopefully you will have to take a guess at these. One thing that's useful on the exam, by the way, is that as far as we know, as far as what we've been able to determine, is that you are not penalized for taking a guess and getting it wrong. A wrong question does not appear to take points away from you. So you don't lose anything by guessing. If anything, you can only gain points if you happen to guess right. So never leave a question blank on your exam. That's a missed opportunity to have that there. Make sure you go through and are familiar with what the different strategies are for taking those exams. Those can be pretty important when you're going through it. Let's see how we did on this one, though. On which of the following would you find an SOC? An SOC. How do we do? Well, let's find out. We're a little bit torn. It's almost a 5-way tie. At least if you look at the ones 32%, 33%, a third of you have said it's SCADA. 23% of you said firewall. We have 17% that said media player, 15% said database server, and 12% said load balancer. But the real answer is we have no idea what this is, what this SOC thing is. This is actually a topic from the exam that is new on the 501. So if you've studied previous versions of the exam, you probably were not familiar with this new topic called System on a Chip. This is pretty timely considering the news this week of the brand new Raspberry Pi that was introduced that is effectively a system on a chip. I have the old picture here of the third, I think that's the third edition, isn't it? I'm looking at that and trying to figure it out. But this is a device where you have multiple components, multiple functions running on a single chip. Now, obviously, there are interfaces and other things on this particular system on a chip. But this is where you would certainly, when you're looking at these, try to figure out the details. Usually it's very small form factor. That's really what we're focusing on when we look at a system on a chip. It needs to be this tiny device. So how many different things can we cram into this single chip? That is one that really does come in handy to be able to do that. Yes, the SOC, the S was not security. So that may have thrown everyone a little bit as you're looking through this. This is one where it doesn't use much power. The memories on this device, you've got the system on a chip on this device, and then interfaces. That's kind of it. You plug it in and it works to have all of these things here. This is one where if you're trying to figure out how to manage this device, security becomes important for the system on a chip as well. This is one where as you're trying to work through the different options, it should now be relatively obvious as we work through these. So where would you find system on a chip? Will you find system on a chip in a SCADA environment? Probably not. SCADA would be an environment where you might have power equipment or other industrial machinery, and you are working with that equipment and trying to use that equipment. It's automated through a number of different systems. You probably are not going to use a system on a chip to manage SCADA. Let's hope you're not using that to manage that. That's what you're hoping for anyway as you work through these. If the next highest on the list was firewall, 24% of you said firewall. Probably not going to see a firewall running on an SoC. Doesn't mean you couldn't, but it's certainly not built for doing a firewall. The question, of course, to ask you on which of the following would you most likely find the SoC? So the most likely is going to be the one in this list that really meets those requirements the best. 19% of you said media player. I would go with media player as well. Media player is the correct answer in this case. Very common to use an SoC type device to do media player. So hopefully that's one where, as you're working through the details, that's what we were looking for. A database server, again, you could run a database server on a system on a chip. I was pretty impressed with the specs of the new Raspberry Pi 4. You could do a lot with that device. You could run a database server, but that's probably not the primary use of one of these components. And of course, we were looking for the most likely answer in here. And lastly, load balancer. 11% of you chose load balancer. Folks are saying that's not a security question, but the proliferation of system-on-a-chip devices becomes an incredibly important concern for security professionals. And you should absolutely be familiar with these technologies, how people are using them, and perhaps more importantly, how to protect them. What type of operating system is running on these? How do you update these systems? How do you firewall them properly? You're going to run into them, and you certainly should be familiar with those as you're running through security, which is why SoC and system-on-a-chip is part of the CompTIA exam objectives. So make sure you're familiar with those. Here's a close-up of, because why wouldn't you put? This is the Raspberry Pi 3. Had I remembered this was in here, remember I had not even remembered what the questions were that we were going through today. Had I remembered that this was a question, I would have probably swapped out the picture for the new Raspberry Pi 4. Oh, somebody in the chat room, Jake's already getting a Raspberry Pi 4 for his Plex server. Well done, sir. That sounds like a good plan to me as well. Well, let's get, as we go back, quickly review this. We did have 19% of you chose media player. Media player was the correct answer. Thank you for that. Thanks for that one. I think we need to find a question that maybe we're a little more familiar with from a security perspective. So it turns out my slides are in the right order now. And here's the next question that asks, a system administrator uses a PIN to unlock the door to the data center. That's a PIN for those of you listening in. Which of these best describes this authentication factor? So a system administrator is using a PIN to unlock the door to the data center. Which of these best describes this authentication factor? Is it somewhere you are, something you have, something you know, something you do, or something you are? Which one of those could it possibly be? Hopefully you're familiar with one of those that it could possibly be. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. You can lock in your answer right there. Please no answers in the chat room or any hints in the chat room. So your system administrator is using a PIN to unlock the door to the data center. Which of these best describe this authentication factor? Is it somewhere you are, something you have, something you know, something you do, or something you are? One of those five. Hopefully. See, aren't we feeling a little better about this one? Everybody's now familiar. We keep hearing about these whenever you go through. You get a little bit of it in A+, you get a little bit of this in Network Plus. So here's a topic that we're not having to figure out. I guess we still have to know what a pin is. So we're still hitting those when we deal with that. SCADA does not tend to have systems on a chip, no. And Office HVAC is not SCADA. That is not, I would not qualify that as SCADA. SCADA is a much larger industrial system that is creating the power that is being used by your office HVAC. We'll put that into perspective. SCADA is a completely different animal. If you're working in an industry that is generating power, then you're very familiar with SCADA. That is a different animal altogether. There's so many different rules, regulations on protecting SCADA environments. We just had, for example, I think it was last week, we had those blackouts in South America, entire countries going no power in South America, trying to figure out why that happened. They came up with a couple of reasons that I think most people could possibly believe that it was not related to anything with their SCADA systems, allegedly. But those are concerns you think about immediately when entire countries go off the grid and things start going wrong. You're wondering, did somebody get in there to those SCADA systems? That's one of those where whenever you start working through the details, you start worrying about what those things happen to be. This question, though, was not quite such a concern. We've all used PIN numbers to unlock doors before, I think. Most of us have anyway. So let's see how we did with this one. We'll click the How Do We Do button. 90% of us said something you know. 90%. Now, is that really the right answer, though? We have all single digits, 1, 2, 3, and 4% said somewhere you are, something you have, something you do, and something you are. So that would be a situation where you're trying to figure out which one of these could it possibly be. Something you know seems to be the clear winner in here, and probably because it's something you know. It's something that's in your brain. You have it, you know it, and the only way that you could have that particular piece of the authentication work is if you knew it. So, of course, that is the situation. So a personal identification number, a very good example. And we're assuming folks in the chat room are now trying to put caveats on this. What if you wrote down the personal identification number and you're keeping it in your pocket? Is it something you have? I guess it would be at that case, but you would also be fired for writing down the PIN number and keeping it on a sheet of paper. That's not the right answer. The right answer is something you know. A PIN number is not intended to be written on a sheet of paper and stored. That's not, at that point, it kind of ceases being a personal identification number because it's no longer personal, isn't it? To have that in those cases. So, yeah, a pattern. This is one we go back and forth on. People in the chat room and myself go back and forth on, is a pattern something you know or is it something you do? And I think knowing the pattern is the important part. Doing the pattern is irrelevant. That's not really something you do. Something you do is not pattern based. The pattern is something you already know about and you just happen to do it on the screen. If that's the case, wouldn't a PIN number be a pattern? Would that be something you do because you have to type in the PIN number? No. PIN number is something you know. So that's in my brain, that's the way I'm putting it together. And I think that works on there as well. This is, thanks to the chat room, saying exactly the same thing that we have just said. Yeah, what if you have to spell out each number, YMCA? Is that something you do? We need a new door unlocking system that requires that you do some type of calisthenic to be able to answer, to get that door open. That would be something you do. That would be useful if we knew that part. How did we do on this one? Well, we did pretty darn well, didn't we? We did 90% of us said something you know. A PIN number is something you know, a personal identification, a PIN number. It's not a PIN number, is it? As many of you are aware, that's a bit redundant, but that's what we say. An ATM machine and a PIN number. I think we should do that. So that's one of those that we run into. The personal identification number is something you know, ideally something you know and only you know, and you would be the only one to know it because that's the only way to get it from you is out of your brain. That is something you know. Let's do another question. Let's get away from something you know and things you are and what you do and all of those pieces. Our next question asks, a piece of manufacturing equipment is no longer sold and individual parts for the equipment are no longer available. Which of the following would best describe the lifetime of this equipment? Would it be MTTR, MTBF, RTO, RPO, or MTTF? Those are 5 oddly named responses. Again, we're getting into acronyms, but Security Plus is full of acronyms. Let's go through this question one more time. We're figuring out these details. A piece of manufacturing equipment is no longer sold, and individual parts for the equipment are no longer available. Which of the following would best describe the lifetime of this equipment? Would it be MTTR, MTBF, RTO, RPO, or MTTF? You think you know the answers? Go to professormesser.com/QA. Put in your answers there. Please don't put answers in the chat room. Please don't put any hints in the chat room. We're going to figure this out as if we are sitting there in the exam. Nope, we can't phone a friend, which was a pretty good request from the chat room. You can phone a friend after the exam, but it's too late there to figure out those pieces too. Hopefully you were figuring out what all of these happen to be. This is a question, I hate that we have these, that you have to figure out what the answer is going to be based on performing another step. But that is one you will absolutely run into on your exam, is that you have to go through multiple steps to finally get the answer that's being asked of you. And the multiple steps on this one obviously are that I am giving you the abbreviations, the acronyms at the end of this, that is really describing what the answers are. And the reality is, by the way, in the industry, we generally talk in acronyms. We talk a lot in acronyms. So this is one where you're going to have to know as well for those. Absolutely. So be familiar with those as you're working through them. Let's see how we did. Let's see how we're doing. We've got a few more people that are locking in their answers and getting all of those. This is one that would be really good to go through. So hopefully you're able to step through all of these pieces too. And yes, there are too many acronyms. People in the chat room are agreeing. Way too many acronyms, but that's the way we do it in the industry. There's probably more acronyms in Network Plus, wouldn't you think? I think there are to have those. So maybe you'd run into that as well. Let's see how we did. Let's bring over the mouse and click the How Do We Do button. And we've got 42% of us, not a majority, but still a pretty good number compared to the others. 41% of us say MTTF. We have 19% that said MTTR. Just behind it, 17% said RTO. We've got 13% that had said MTBF, and then 10% that said RPO. So this is where you get into, especially when you're trying to recover a system that is working through all of these pieces, this is where you really get into trying to figure out where do we go from here and working through those pieces. The lifetime of this equipment. Some people are even saying that this is end of life. This is not end of life because we're still using it. It's a manufacturing equipment. We are still working through and have to deal with this piece of equipment being used in a production environment, even though the manufacturer of this equipment is no longer making it anymore. And as much as it would be in a perfect world for us to simply throw out that piece of equipment and get one that is supported, unfortunately, that is not reality. That's practically the situation in every single place you would run into. So now we have to figure out, how do we support it? How are we going to maintain this device? And how do we determine what the lifetime of this device is going to be, since we are still going to use it? So here is how we would figure that out. We would do it through a number of different ways. For instance, an MTTR, which was one of the options, 20% of you chose MTTR, is a mean time to repair. Now, in this particular case, we already know this equipment's no longer sold and individual parts of the equipment no longer available. So how are you going to repair this? You're not really going to be able to do it. This is one where MTTR would not be the right answer because there's no method of repair available. The one that probably is the better answer, the best answer in this scenario, is the MTTF. The mean time to failure, the 41% of you that chose mean time to failure were the ones that were spot on. This is the expected lifetime of a non-reparable product, non-reparable product or a system, the mean time to failure. So effectively, your management is going to say, well, we know we're going to have to buy another one of these. This piece of equipment, it's not supported by the manufacturer. We don't have parts for it. We can't get parts for it. We're having to go to eBay just to find things, hopefully, but we're not finding anything. So how long has this device got? Give me a number. Estimate for me how long this device is going to continue to work. And that will be your mean time to failure. Because when it fails, that's it. You're done. You're finished. There is nothing else you can do. That is the right answer. The mean time to failure, that answer E, the 42% of you that chose mean time to failure, that is the right answer. So in fact, you're going to have to estimate this. It may be that you know this device is made of very low quality parts. It tends to break often. We get very bad reports from other people that are using this equipment. You're going to have to do some research and figuring out and give your best idea of what you think the mean time to failure would happen to be. Some other options that were available as answers were the mean time between failures. So if you have multiple devices or you're just putting in a new device every time it fails, you're going to want to calculate a mean time between those failures. So you've got also the options for RTO, which is a recovery time objective. That's how long it takes to get back up and running or get back up and running to a particular service level. And then there was the RPO, which is the recovery point objectives, meaning there could be a point where you're bringing the system online. It's not online 100%, but at what point are we at least able to get partially up and running? That was the recovery point objective, so you can figure out what that recovery point might be. So in our case, those are the 5 answers. The one that was the right answer, the MTTF, the mean time to failure, is how you would describe a device that is no longer sold, no longer able to be repaired. That's how you would work through those pieces. Hopefully, you were able to do that as well. This is one wherever I start going through all of the different answers that are in here, I want to be able to know what these are as well. So hopefully, you were able to break those down and see what those differences are. I know whenever I've been trying to look at a question like this, it's practically all acronyms. This is your opportunity to maybe take certain acronyms and the ones you know, you can say, yep, I know that one's solid. The ones you don't, you could say, maybe that might be an option, and you can choose maybe between 2 or 3 of them. That would at least give you an advantage on the exam. Another one of those things to think about. All of these crazy acronyms, all of these crazy topics are all in my videos. I've gone through every single one of these exam objectives. I've checked them off and made a topic about them in my videos. They are all there. So I highly recommend you go through the videos, you take some notes, you make sure you know exactly the topics that are covered, maybe cross-reference against your exam objectives. But I realize that there are a lot of people that just don't have a way to go through every single one of these videos. Well, I've already taken the notes for you, and I put them into a single PDF document. These are my Security Plus course notes that cover everything from the Security Plus exam. This is the largest set of course notes I have at 94 pages long because I include all of the text. I include all of the graphics. I include everything, all the charts, all the tables, everything that was there. I go through and I put it into these course notes so you would be able to see them. I've got the course notes right here, PDF version of these. So I'll flip through them. You can see an extensive set of index, and then each video has all of the notes there for you to take advantage of for the exam, including things like the graphics, like DNS amplification. Although I changed the graphic a bit so it would work better in a set of notes rather than the animation that you see in the video itself. And it's only $20. It's also something that helps keep the site running. A lot of you have said, I want to contribute to the site. Well, I don't take donations. I want to give you something for your money. And hopefully this is not only something that I can give you for your money, this is something that can really help you before you walk into the exam and get those topics really solid. So you can know what an SOC is, what an MTTF is. You already went through it. It's in your notes. It's all in one place. There are also physical versions of this available. I got a physical version right here. Get it back out of here. Here it is. There's the course notes. They really do exist in the real world, printed on dead trees right there. All color. Nice, high-quality pages. This is a perfect bound, they call it, kind of the softback book binding, 8.5 by 11 book. And you can get this as well. I will ship it to you in the mail. So you can purchase. It's a little more expensive because I have to print them, and I have to print them in color. Sorry about that piece. But you get all of those together. But get all of those. And if you get the physical version, you will also get the printed, or you get the printed version. I'll also send you the digital version as well. So you can download at least the version immediately and start to use it. You don't have to wait for that physical version to get there. So that might help you too. It's all available. Find out more about this, professormesser.com/securitycn. Thanks so much for your support. We would not be able to keep this site running without your support, and this is a great way to do it. Thank you so much. Let's do another question, though. We got some time here. Let's get through another Q&A. Here we go. This question, well, it's a long one, so let me click the button so you can see it on your Socrative side. And the question is, an attacker has infected a government healthcare reporting website with malware in an effort to gain access to a hospital network. When the hospital visits the government site, the malware will attempt to infect the hospital computer. Which of the following would best describe this attack type? Is it watering hole, man in the middle, hoax, data injection, or cross-site request forgery? Those are your 5 options. Let's go through this question one more time. The question asks, an attacker has infected a government healthcare reporting website with malware in an attempt to gain access to a hospital network. When the hospital visits the government site, the malware will attempt to infect the hospital computer. Which of the following would best describe this attack type? Is it watering hole, man in the middle, hoax, data injection, and cross-site request forgery? Those are your 5 options. Hopefully you're familiar with what these different options are. This is one that should come in handy if you're ever trying to work through these different attack types. As you know, in Security Plus, I think there's 742 different attack types. No, there's probably 15. It just seems like that many. So that's what you want to do, is be able to get through this and figure out, of those different attack types, unfortunately you only have 5 to choose from here, which one of these is it? At least you'll have a chance to step through this and figure out, how are these going to work properly? What attack type is it that someone would use? What is the scenario here? And being able to work through this. And hopefully you've been able to work through these as well and figuring out the details. If you do think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. You'll be able to answer this on your screen. Lock in your answer and we'll see how you're doing. I'm watching the answers come in on the other screen here, watching them come through. As you're Googling these answers and figuring out the details, let's see how you did with this one. This was a very specific scenario, wasn't it? Where an attacker has infected a government healthcare site, and they've infected it with malware in an attempt to gain access to a hospital network. When the hospital visits the government site, the malware will attempt to infect the hospital computer. Which of the following would best describe this attack type? How do we do? Let's click it. There we go. 66% of you say watering hole. That's a pretty good majority. We've got some pretty strong answers, though. Double digits for a man in the middle. 12% of you said man in the middle. Double digits also, 11% said data injection. And 13% of you said cross-site request forgery. Almost a 3-way tie for second, if you look at it that way. And then way down at 1%, we have hoax. Hardly anybody thought it was hoax in that scenario. This is a very, very specific attack type. And for those of you that answered the 65% watering hole, you were absolutely right. It was watering hole. This is a way that you can go to where everybody is getting water and attack the watering hole itself. So in this particular case, you've got a scenario where the watering hole is that government website. This question was actually taken from an actual situation, where from a real situation. This is how the bad guys got access, except instead of a hospital, it was banks. It was financial institutions. So what they do is they infect the third-party site that they know everybody's going to come to, in this case, to put their reporting information in, but to get their water. That's why we call it a watering hole attack. so that you might infect the website or put malware so that anybody who visits on the website would be infected with that malware. In some cases, watering hole attacks have been very specific. It didn't infect everybody that visited the website. It was waiting for particular users to visit the website, and only those particular users would be infected with malware, ostensibly to keep anyone from realizing the malware was there to begin with. Pretty crafty on the way of the bad guys. So maybe it's everybody, maybe it's just individual people, but regardless, this is one where the watering hole attack is a pretty challenging one to have to deal with. And so that is the right answer here. 65% did say a watering hole attack. You were spot on. No problem with understanding what that is. Three-way tie for second, though, a cross-site request forgery. Now, this particular scenario and the malware that was here did not have any characteristics here that would lead us down a road that would have us believe that the actual attack had something to do with the cross-site request forgery. There was no other site even mentioned on here. So this was one where probably not the best answer, because you can see the question itself is phrased in a way that is very similar to the exam, which asks, which of the following would best describe this attack type? There was nothing in the question that led us down the road of thinking this would be a cross-site request forgery, so that would not be the right answer. We have 12% that chose data injection. In this particular case, we're not taking information that's already there and injecting other information into it. In fact, we don't even know what the details were of the malware itself. Therefore, that would probably not be the best one either. And then we have man in the middle. 12% of you did say man in the middle. And I don't think it's man in the middle either, because there is no man in the middle. They're not sitting in the middle of the conversation. They're simply putting the payload onto the server. Then they're going away. They don't even have to be there. So that's one that does become helpful to know, that you don't have to even be there for somebody to take over. Therefore, it would not be a man in the middle. Man in the middle is when they're there in the middle of the conversation, you don't know it. In this case, they just dropped off the malware on the server and they went and got a pizza down at the watering hole. They just waited for the folks to show up on the website, and the malware took care of everything from there. If you're watching this study group for continuing education credit, you can, of course, simply submit those to CompTIA directly. But if you would like to receive a digitally signed email from me that shows that you must have watched this for a 1-hour webinar category CEU credit, you need to follow these instructions very specifically. You want to, of course, go to the study, top of the bottom of the website of the study group here at ProfessorMesser.com. At the top or the bottom of the site, there's a link that says Contact Us. That Contact Us is going to send me an email. Make sure you put in that email that this is the June 2019 Security Plus Study Group. You also may want to put this special code word. You have to put the special code word in there. That's how I know that you're watching this. Either you're watching this live. You can also do this if you're watching on the replay. Put the special code word of watering hole. That's what we're going to put as the code word of the month, is watering hole. And if I see this message come through, you can, of course, put anything else you would like to into the body of the message. It's going to ask for your name. It's going to ask for your email address. Also do that. Make sure you put those in. And if you do put that information in, I'll be able to read through these. I'm the one reading these, and I'm not able to respond back to all of them with the details of what you may have put, but I will send you back a digitally signed email that says you must have watched this because you followed these instructions and gave me the super secret code word of the month. If you are in a situation where you need these CEUs very quickly, make sure you tell me, so that it usually takes me about a week or so to get these back to you. So tell me if you need them very quickly and I can turn them around and get them back to you. I think most of you are probably in a situation where you're probably using CertMaster CE these days or something other than CEUs. But if you are someone who's collecting CEUs, I'm more than happy to help. So that's one you can do as well. Go through those pieces and you'll be great. Let's do another question. We got time for one more. We can sneak another one in before we're done. Here's a question that is asking, click it on your screen so you can see it on the Socrative side. A system administrator would like to validate all domain name resolution requests made to the corporate web server. Which of the following would provide this functionality? This is one where you should be able to break down these different pieces. Here are the 5 options available to you. Is it IPsec, SSH, HTTPS, DNSSEC, or SNMP v3? It's got to be one of those, right? So the question was, a system administrator would like to validate all domain name resolution requests made to the corporate web server. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it IPsec, SSH, HTTPS, DNSSEC, or SNMP v3? Those are your 5 options for validating that functionality. Maybe you've run into that functionality before. If you have, you can go to professormesser.com/QA and answer that question. And hopefully that will be one that you're familiar with, being able to work through, be able to lock those answers in. This will probably be a good one to know for the exam. All 5 of those things, by the way, are real, actual, secure type things. Those are all part of the security exam objectives. Make sure you're familiar with those as you step through all of those pieces. That should be one, and maybe you can take 1 or 2 of them and throw them out if you're not completely sure. Be able to at least work through what all of those different options might be. That should be a good one to step through. Let's see, I'm watching those of you locking it in. I think we might be doing pretty well with this one. I've not looked at the answers yet. I want to be as surprised as you when we see the answers come up. So we're going to see how this goes, see how you get these answers. They're going in pretty quick, which makes me believe you may be familiar with this technology and being able to work through it. So let's look at how we did. A system administrator would like to validate all domain name resolution requests made to the corporate web server. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it IPsec, SSH, HTTPS, DNSSEC, or SNMP v3? And 78% of you, by far, have said it's DNSSEC. That's what we would use to validate domain name resolution requests. And everything else is single digits. We have 8% said SNMP3, 8% said IPsec. We've got 6% that said HTTPS, and we got 1% that said SSH. So hopefully this will be one where you're familiar with DNSSEC. In fact, that's one that if you're a system administrator dealing with DNS, you're probably familiar with this. That's because there really was no security in DNS. We kind of had to shoehorn the security into the DNS protocol because there was no way to protect it. We came up with the domain name system security extensions, the DNSSEC, to be able to do that. It effectively allows us to combine public key cryptography with a DNS server, with the DNS domain name system. So that was one wherever you try to figure out how can we use this public key cryptography, digital signatures, how can we make sure that we know how DNS works? That's how we do it. That's exactly how we would make it happen through DNSSEC. So if you answered D for DNSSEC, that's exactly the right answer. That's the one we would expect to find if we were trying to deal with DNS servers. Now, if you're someone who's been working with cryptography and working with being able to encrypt information going across the network, you're probably familiar with IPsec and IPsec tunnels. Those are commonly used for communications between endpoints or between different sites. Those IPsec tunnels are handy, but they aren't related to name resolution. So that would not be the best option in this particular answer. It would not provide the functionality to validate DNS requests. So that's certainly not the right answer. HTTPS, pretty useful for encrypting web communication to a web server. But again, that doesn't encrypt or have any way to validate DNS requests. SNMP v3, commonly used for management, Simple Network Management Protocol version 3. Again, a secure protocol allows us to encrypt those communications. But of course, again, has nothing to do with DNS. If you're managing a router, you're managing a server, you're managing a firewall, you would, of course, be using SNMP, but it doesn't have a way to validate DNS. And lastly, SSH, your secure shell. That's the one where you are working with a terminal screen. You're logging into a device. You're logging into a router, a firewall, a switch, a Linux machine, another operating system, and being able to do that. SSH does that. So SSH as a secure shell is secure, but doesn't do any validation to DNS. So again, that's what we were really focused on with this question, is being able to validate DNS. And if you ever get to a situation where you have to do that, that's where you want to focus your efforts, is trying to figure out the right protocols to be able to make that happen. And hopefully you were able to do that as well with this answer, because the 78% of you that did choose DNSSEC, you did get that one absolutely correct. Well done. We went through quite a number of different options on this particular study group. We have so many different questions we went through, and those questions, there it is, came directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. You're probably familiar with these objectives because I've only mentioned them 20 times so far in the study group. And the reason I mentioned them is that they are so important. The way that we would deal with understanding what's on the exam is all in these exam objectives. I've had people ask me, how do I know what to study? It's in the exam objectives. They break it down perfectly for you. They tell you specifically what you should be able to do with those exam objectives. So make sure that you are familiar with what's in those exam objectives. We do one of these study groups every month. We got another one in July 24th. Come back for this one. I'm skipping that first week of the month. Normally we have A+ in the first week, Network Plus in the second week, and Security Plus in the third week. But here in the United States, we have Independence Day on the first week of July 4th. So we're not doing any study groups in that first week. We're taking a vacation, at least for a week. We'll be back the following week to do A+ on the 9th and 11th, Network Plus on the 17th. Come back for the Security Plus on the 24th. Is pretty good as well. We'd love to have you here. Don't forget about the course notes you can find at professormesser.com/securitycn. We've got our YouTube and all the videos available on our YouTube channel at professormesser.com/YouTube. Feel free to go there, subscribe to the channel. We're able to put things up all the time. Have this here. We've, of course, got Twitter and Facebook. Just put in professormesser.com/the thing that you would like to find me on. And if I am on that thing, you will be directed to that thing. Instagram, for example, is not on this list. You can find my Instagram there, professormesser.com/Instagram. It's all there to have. Stick around for the next hour. We'll open up the call-in lines. We'll take questions from the chat room. We'll just hang out for an hour. It's the after show coming up in just a moment. Thank you for being here, though. We will see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. Now let's see if I can get the phone lines, up and running. There we go. I should be able to do that. Let's see if I can get those pieces going. Here we go. I need to host a show. All of this is done in the cloud. I'll give you the phone lines, and you don't have to call in. You take questions from the chat room. That makes it easy as well. We've already had a couple come in to be able to talk about those. I'll start up the show, and I will call into the show. I don't even have my Skype going here. I've got to do that. Get that running on my screen. And then I can call in. Bear with me just a moment. We will get those calls in, and then I will take your calls in just a moment.
Thank you for calling.
Well, you're welcome for me calling. I will type in my super secret number.
Enter your secret.
There we go. And then I'll put in my PIN number, which is redundant as we are so painfully aware at this point.
Welcome.
Welcome. See how that works? That should work. And now I can give you the phone number. If you would like to call in, or if you'd like to ask a question, you could, of course, ask the question in the chat room. We've already got a few people asking questions there right now. And you could also call me directly. If you're in the continental U.S., you can call it 855-785-7545. That's 855-785-RJ45. You can also, if you're anywhere else outside of the continental U.S., you can also call for free by using Skype, which does not require any Skype minutes. I will pay for those Skype minutes. You put in a +1 855-785-7545, and you can call in as well to get those. So there's different ways to go about doing that. That's the best way to get in touch. If you're watching this on the replay, obviously those phones won't be open and active. You can always call in after the fact and leave a message, though. So that's something you can do as well. Folks in the chat room, one of the questions somebody asked, Harvo asked, what's the best way to study cryptography and PKI concepts? From my view, it was very difficult to grasp the details of this because it didn't seem like it was real. It didn't seem like you could take one key and encrypt with it and nobody else would be able to see it except this one other key that you happen to have. It was almost ridiculous in trying to deal with this. One of the best ways I found to understand it was to actually use it, was to grab GPG, which is the GNU Privacy Guard. That is a public key cryptography. It's very compatible with PGP, just the name, thus the name GPG. So the GPG encryption, first it allows you to build your own keys, so you know what a public key and a private key is, and then you can use it. You can use it with your email. You can send email to other people. My public key is available on all the public key servers. If you wanted to send me an email that was encrypted, send it to james@professormesser.com. I will receive your email, and let's see if I can read it. That's a great way to see. And then I will take your key and I will encrypt some information using your public key and send it to you and see if you can decrypt it with your private key. So we can go back and forth on this and see if the encryption is working. And then maybe we'll start digitally signing things. Maybe we'll send information to each other that is not encrypted, but it is digitally signed. And then we can validate the digital signature on the other side. In fact, one of the ways when we were doing this with someone else, we found that they were using Hotmail. Hotmail was putting ads into the message and effectively changing the text of the message, and therefore the digital signature would not validate. So we were able to see that this would not work with that particular mail system because the mail was changing the email itself, and rightly so, the digital signature did not properly validate, which meant somebody tampered with the message. Now, in our case, it was an ad. We could see where they tampered with the message. But what if somebody said in the contract that you owe me $100 and you change it to $1,000? You might not catch that, but a digital signature would absolutely catch that. So it's another thing to think about as you're going through all of these different pieces. Grab some coffee real quick, then we're going to go to the phone lines. Make sure I'm able to talk properly. Let's do that. Let's go to the phone lines and talk to first have to turn them up a little bit. The 208 area code is calling. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Tristan Knight, and I'm calling from Idaho.
Idaho. Way to go. Thank you for calling. What can we do for you?
So I'm going to take the Security Plus in a couple days.
Excellent.
And I'm concerned about the performance-based questions.
All right.
Have we found, mainly, is it going to be in like a computer simulated environment, or has the Security Plus just been drag and drop mostly, or drop down and stuff?
What I have heard, I have seen, obviously, CompTIA requires that you sign a candidate agreement when you go into the exam, so you're not able to talk about the details of the exam. But what the word on the street, what I have been told and what I've seen myself is that it's a mixture of different things. Some of them are drag and drop. Some of them are fill in the blank. No, I haven't seen a fill in the blank yet. I've seen a drag and drop. I've seen one that you have a pull down that gives you different options, and you have to, in these different spots, pull down the pull down list and choose from a list. That's an interesting one. There's others that have been putting things in the right place. There have been other things that are matching questions. Some have been putting things in a particular order. The important thing, though, is I found that a number of them are really, really relatively straightforward. They are nothing that you should even get close to being concerned about. Some of them are painfully easy. Instead of asking you a multiple choice question of what's the first thing you do and what's the last thing you do, instead they give you a list of everything you would do and tell you to put it in that particular order. So that's where I would go with this, is don't worry so much about how they're asking the question. Worry about the topics that would be asked of you. And it really goes back to the CompTIA exam objectives. If you know what's on the exam objectives, it doesn't matter how they ask the question. What matters is, do you know the right answer for how they're asking it? And they're relatively straightforward. Don't wrap yourself around the axle or worry too much about not being able to get through those. You're going to find that's probably the least of your worries on the exam.
Okay.
Hopefully
awesome.
that'll.
So not.
If I were you, you said you got 2 days left.
Question.
So go through your exam objectives, use them as a checklist. They are the perfect way to know if you're really ready for the exam. If you can describe to someone else the topic that is listed on the exam objectives, I would say you can check that one off and go to the next one. You should be able to get a number of topics maybe you're not 100% strong on. That's where you should focus over the next couple of days, and you're going to do great on the exam.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
I appreciate the call. That's one of those where you don't have to worry so much about the mechanics. They do make it relatively straightforward. They're relatively easy to get those things there. So don't worry so much about all of those. How are they going to ask? Instead, worry about what they are going to ask. That's really the important part. Let's go to 559. Hi, caller. Thank you for calling. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello, Professor Messer. I'm the caller from last month with the really aggressive cert schedule.
Oh, this is one where, if I recall properly, because a lot has happened to me in a month. So you were doing like 1, 2, 3. Was it 2 in a row or 3 in a row?
It was 4 in a row.
It was 4 in a row. See, that's how bad I don't even remember the details of this. So give us an update.
I got a story to tell that will hopefully inspire a lot of people.
Okay.
So the first thing, I went in to take A+. So it's Core 1 and Core 2. They had me book them on consecutive days.
Wow.
Which, when I hear you say how it takes you 3 or months for an exam, I'm like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do it? So what I do is I go through your 220, 1001, all the videos, the whole playlist. I just binge through them in like 1 or 2 days. And then it becomes to a point of, what else do I have? So you mentioned, you need to have good videos, good books, good Q&A, and good hands-on.
That's it.
Well, I already don't have a book because I can't really buy it. I do have the hands-on, and I've got the Q&A, and it helps. I want to tell everybody right now that it helps when you go ahead and do that. And before the exam, I'm go to CompTIA exam objectives, and I'd go through them. And what I would do, if you don't know something, just Google the objective. It will tell you. You don't need to read into the rabbit hole. You just need to get a basic idea of what it does. So, what exactly is round robin DNS? You just look it up and you read one page, and you're like, okay, I know what it is. Yep. How it works. And then, so I do that, and I take Core 1, and I'm like, all right, let's do. So, for A+, I had to do Core 1 and Core 2 studying at the same time because I can't go through all of your videos
Wow.
for Core 2.
Yep.
And the challenge was you didn't even have them done for Core 2 by the time it was time for me to take the exam. So I only had half the course.
Right.
And I was lucky that I'm better at software than I am at hardware.
Right.
And I was able to pass both exams and get certified.
Wow.
That was crazy. Then it was on to Network Plus. And then I again started with your videos, N10007, the whole playlist. That's really helpful, by the way, how you put them in a playlist.
Great.
Been through that in about 1 or 2 days. And again, Google any exam objectives I don't know. And really having the hands-on experience helps. And then Network Plus, I took it and I passed it, and that was great. And then it was Server Plus. And this is when it gets interesting because you don't have content for Server Plus.
Nope.
Exam S0-004. So I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? It's going to be hard to get content. So what I essentially start doing is, okay, let's just go through go to YouTube, go to other sources. It's like, okay, wait. So all the videos, a lot of what people are doing is going outside the exam objectives. And it's like, come on, really?
Yeah. Right.
I can tell right away. And it's like, okay, so I download the exam objectives, and it's like, okay, they don't talk about this crazy configuration that they're often talking about. And I wish you had content for that. But the day before, I Googled all the exam objectives, a lot of them. And as I was taking the exam, it kept hitting me over and over. Wow, I can't believe I Googled this yesterday. I wouldn't have known if I hadn't Googled it.
Right.
And I passed that one as well. That was crazy. And then Security Plus, I was pretty confident about it. Actually, for something unrelated to Security Plus, I listened to your study groups all the way since 2017, from
Wow.
January 2017 up until this one. All the study groups, I've been binging through them for a few months, and that was very educational. And I'm like, yeah, I got Security Plus, and then I take it, and then I pass it, and then life is awesome right now.
Nice. Holy cow. That is an enormous achievement in such a short period of time. And I like that you were able to take advantage of the hands-on. One of the things, if you've had to binge my study groups, then unfortunately you've had to hear me say the same things over and over and over again, because I'm constantly telling people, get the exam objectives. These really, really, really help you. And I feel like I can't say that strong enough, but you just did. And I love your strategy with taking what's on the exam objectives and then Googling it, because it gives you, even if you don't have a book, like you mentioned you didn't, it effectively gives you that reading part of learning, because I strongly feel that videos teach you in one way, books teach you in a different way. And you have to combine these different ways of learning. For example, your hands-on. You said the hands-on added this extra piece to what you were doing that allowed you to put all those things together. So I feel like you were getting all the right food groups together in this food pyramid, in this learning pyramid that you were working on. And I think they were all able to work very well together with you. It must have been a lot. There's a lot that you went through in a very short period of time. If someone was in the same situation that you were, and as you've mentioned, I highly recommend people don't do it this way, but sometimes you have to. You have no other choice. If someone had to binge this information in a short period of time, are there other things you think they should consider other than what you've just mentioned? I
don't know. First, yeah, I'd like to second everything that you just said. It's awesome, and like For really, when I had to binge this, it's like the human equivalent of a buffer overflow. So like I'm binging it, and then I just pass out and I fall asleep for an hour or two, and then I wake up and I'm like, whoa, I missed so much content. Got to go back. And I had to do it over and over and over again, and it feels like you're trying to shove a lake full of water into a gallon-sized bucket over and over again, and it's a lot of work. I would not recommend that people do it. If you can make it so that you don't have to do it and you have a lot of time and you can space your exams out, please go ahead and do that. I don't exactly know how to like best advise people to do it, but it's great.
It's great that you were able to do it. I'm sorry you were in this situation where you had to do it in such a short period of time, but for others that are in the same situation, maybe it will help them as well. Thank you so much for the update and letting us know your strategies. I think a number of those strategies, by the way, work perfectly well for someone who has a lot of time to study, along with the people who have short periods of time. Maybe that will work out well for them as well.
I got a question for you.
Sure.
What new content are you planning to create?
Oh.
So I'd like to get the CompTIA Pen Test Plus. I want to go for CISA Plus, and I want to go for the CAS Plus. And I've already went through the exam objectives, and they're beastly. And I'm ready for a challenge.
Those are a challenge. There's a lot to those exam objectives. I can't say that I've seen enough traction for those specific certifications by the industry yet. For those that have been listening for a while, there's a lot of different places I can go. And you're right. I've just finished the A+. I've now got the latest Security Plus, Network Plus, and the 2 A+ courses done in just a short period of time. Now, there's something else I have to work on. I'm already working on the next thing. Unfortunately, that next thing does not include Pen Test Plus. It does not include CISA. It does not include any of those CompTIA security certifications, unfortunately. Hopefully, maybe those certifications will get a little bit more traction in the future. But I'm going to have to abandon you if you're heading that direction, I'm afraid. Sorry about that.
That's all right. I guess it's up to the people like me who collect the certifications. I collect them like cards. I love doing this. And what I'll do, hopefully, is get employers' attention and help get them the traction so that maybe they can raise awareness. Because the content seems awesome.
I have to agree with you that the topics that are in the exam objectives for those certifications is pretty spot on. And I'm speaking from the perspective of someone who has been a systems engineer, who's worked for a next generation firewall company, who has implemented these technologies in these big networks and had to engineer many different types of configurations for many different styles of networks. Everything that's in that list are the people, are the topics of the things these people are using in their networks. So it's the topics are spot on. I think you're right. It just takes a little bit more time for the employers to kind of catch on to that's what people want to learn. And I think once they do that, we'll have the traction we need.
Well, then thank you so much for that. I guess one more thing before I go, because I know I'm guessing you have a lot of callers. I just want to say to all the viewers on the stream, just please subscribe to Professor Messer's channel and click or tap the bell to get notified about all new videos. It really will help him a lot. As somebody who is exploring life as a content creator online and how membership businesses work, so a lot of the creators that I follow do that. You don't do that. You don't do YouTube channel members. You don't do Patreon. So these subscribers are going to help you, I would argue, a lot more than they might help like another creator that is running a membership business.
It's there are many different ways to run a business online. There are so many different business models and how it works out. This one is working great so far. So thanks to the support of everybody who watches, the folks that subscribe to these channels. And most people don't realize when you click that subscribe button on someone's YouTube channel, it really does help a lot. I literally have phone calls now that I can have with Google and the folks at YouTube because I have someone I can talk to now there because they see the viewership we have. They see the people that support the channel. And it's just a numbers game at that point. So whether it's me or anyone else, if you have the folks that are listening, if you have a particular content creator you really, really like, go subscribe to that channel. It costs you nothing. You don't even have to click the bell if you don't want to. But having that subscriber number does a lot of great things on our side. I appreciate the support.
Well, thank you, Professor Messer. And when I get a lot of followers, I will definitely, and if they would like certification content, I will definitely recommend you as the top person to go ahead and go to for that.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for being an amazing content creator, and I just wish you were more widely known. Like people, like you've got the premium content for free, and that is awesome. So thank you so much, and I just want to say bye and have a great day.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much for calling, and congratulations on those certifications. And thank you for your kind words about the channel. I like that people are able to find us online. Quite honestly, you're the ones that are doing the hard part. I just sort of make the videos. You have to go and actually take the exams. So congratulations to all of you that are going through this process. My objective is so that you get a job or get a better job. As long as that's happening, everything else is taking care of itself. So far, so good along those lines. So hopefully you're also able to take some of those tips and tricks away with what this person was able to go through and figure out, how do I take that much information and cram it into a particular period of time? That's the challenge we always have when we're going through these certifications. Let's go back to phone lines. We've got the 808 area code. Let's pop them up, see if my talk button is working. There we go. Hello, 808. Thanks for calling. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, my name is Daryl, and I'm in Hawaii.
Hello, Daryl. Thanks for calling.
Yep. I was just, so I'm changing career fields, and I was wondering if, I've been watching your videos, and it's super interesting and stuff. I've been doing that for about 4 days now because my friend been talking me into this field forever, but I didn't tell him. I'm just wondering how long I should study, and if you have any advice for me being so brand new to this field.
You were mentioning changing from one field to the other. Would you mind sharing where you're moving from and what particular interest in IT you would want to move to?
Yeah, so I was in the infantry, Army.
Great.
And I got out, started going to school. So, I mean, like, the security aspect intrigues me about it, but I I just don't know how much I should study. I don't want to overthink it and study too much and wait too long, but I want to make sure I'm ready for the test.
Well, you've already got a few good things going for you. First, thanks for your service and what you've done for the country. One of the things you can take, though, from your military career, whether it has anything to do with computers or not, is there's a discipline associated with that becomes so important, not just in general in life, but in IT. There is such a discipline because once you get everything running, you don't want to change things unless there's a very good reason. And usually these reasons are based on the goals and objectives of the organization. And there's a process and a procedure for everything, which granted, it's not military process and procedure, but the concept of having that process and procedure is incredibly important. You mentioned security. Everybody wants to get into security, it seems right now. Having come from a security background and worked in the IT security industry, it's a lot of fun. And there are a lot of opportunities there. And there is a nice salary to be made. But it, generally speaking, is not one you jump into at the very beginning of your career. That's because IT security is usually a layered foundation of many different knowledge points. In IT security, you have to understand a little bit about operating systems, sometimes a lot about operating systems. You have to know a lot about networking. And then at that point, you're able to layer on top of that the aspects of security that you need to be able to protect the data that is being used by the operating systems and that is going across the network. So it's this layered step that you would go through. There are some IT security jobs that are quote unquote entry-level security jobs, but they don't tend to be for someone who is entry-level in IT. They're for somebody who is entry-level into security, which I think some people aren't quite aware of, or throws them a little bit when they start looking at the opportunities that are out there. For somebody who's just getting started in IT, I would generally give the advice of starting at the operating system level, whether you're starting with Microsoft or starting with A+ or something along those lines. Microsoft is extremely popular, but I realize there are many organizations out there that have a lot of Linux, and they may be very Linux focused. So you have to look at what opportunities are available in your particular area to see what people are doing. You know, if you're on a particular island, then you may have a limited amount of choices available. You're going to want to do some research and find out what are those different companies and organizations using. Are they using a lot of Microsoft? Are they asking for people who are very knowledgeable in Microsoft? Maybe that's the certification I go with. Once you have that foundational OS there, whether it's Microsoft or Linux or whatever, right on top of that, I think networking applies to everybody who is in IT. And having the more knowledge of networking you know, the better IT person you're going to be for operating systems, for databases, for servers, and for security, especially for security. Someone who is an IT security professional is just as, if not more knowledgeable and an expert in networking as they are in security. And I've given these examples before, but I think it's worth doing again on the study group. If you're setting up an IPsec tunnel between two firewalls, there is extensive IP knowledge you need to be able to subnet across those, to be able to set security policies or VPN policies that will send the data across those particular links. You're probably going to be doing some detailed breakdown of how you're going to send the data with routing, whether it's dynamic routing or static routing. Once you get that information sent across the IPsec VPN, are you going to do network address translation on your side? There's a ton of networking associated with that. Almost nothing I just mentioned has anything to do with security. It practically all is configuring your network. And so these are the things I try to mention to people when you're setting up a SIM, when you're configuring firewall rules, when you're setting up IPsec rules, when you're setting up a site-to-site VPN or a end-user VPN, which are two very different things. There's an extensive amount of networking knowledge you have to bring to the table. So if you're planning to move into security eventually, and these days this can happen very quickly as you move up the ranks, the more networking you know, the better security person you're going to be. So if I had to give you that first step out of the gate, don't worry so much about what you want to do 3 or 4 steps down the line. obviously having an interest in security is going to help lead you down the path. What I tell people to focus on, at least in the IT fields today, just focus on what you want to do next. Everything else will build on that. And the opportunities are many and varied in IT. You can go many directions. Once you hit a particular space, there's 5 or 6 different things you could be doing as your next job. So you'll never be able to figure out where you're going to be 5 years from now. You just need to know where you're going tomorrow. So think about what makes sense for you and what you enjoy. If you like Linux, study some Linux. If you like Microsoft, study some Microsoft. If you like to do break fix, maybe A+ works for you. Find the thing that makes sense based on the jobs that are available in your area. And as long as you do that, you're going to have fun every time you go into work. And the potential for growth and where you go from there is unlimited. So just keep that same philosophy, and I think you're going to do fine.
Okay. I'm actually living in Colorado. I have a house out in Colorado.
Perfect.
I have a friend, 2 friends actually, that work in the security sector for IT. They were in the Army with me. But so you suggest going Network Plus first, like do a Network Plus certification or A+ certification and get a job in that field first to get a good foundation?
I think you're much more marketable in security if you have a strong foundation in networking, no matter what that networking happens to be. You can get Cisco certifications, Juniper certifications, CompTIA certifications. To some degree, there's some Microsoft networking, but that's not really the focus. But those are the big players in networking. If you have a strong knowledge of their technologies, then you effectively have a strong knowledge in networking standards that you can apply across the board. So I think that if you're in a position where you can get that networking knowledge, someone who's hiring for a security position will be much more interested in your networking background than they would somebody who doesn't have that.
Okay. And would it be easier to get an entry-level networking with the certification?
That will depend on the hiring manager and what their philosophy is. There are people that believe certifications will give you a foot in the door. And I think they're, for the most part, for the vast majority of situations, I think that's true. There are some employers out there, and maybe people don't realize this, there are some employers out there that don't want people to have any certifications. They want to hire people that have no possible knowledge, and they will train them. The philosophy being that they can hire you cheaper if you're not smart yet. So I guess that's a valid business model. One of the advantages you have is the people you know already in the industry. These are things that I don't think people take advantage of enough. And I highly encourage people that if you don't already know somebody in the industry, go meet some people. There are Microsoft user groups in your area. There are Cisco user groups in your area. Maybe there's ISSC or ISSA groups in your area for security. There's different user groups, and those user groups are usually people that work in the companies in your area that are already doing these things. And it's useful to get involved with those groups, not just to attend one meeting, but to go to those meetings now. Go be part of that group to see what they're doing and ask people where they work. Ask them what they do. Ask them what they're looking for when they're hiring somebody into these positions. And get on their LinkedIn, become familiar. Sometimes people will send out job postings in their area because a lot of people don't realize if you're working in a company, you can sometimes earn money as an employee by bringing someone in for a position. That money would normally go to a third-party recruiter. They can pay their employees much less to bring in their friends. And now you've got your friends working with you in the same place. That's just a win-win for the employer. So take advantage of these relationships you build. I don't mean take advantage by being immoral or doing something wrong. These are people you're going to know throughout your career. These will be friends that you're able to get onto their Facebook and learn about their families and enjoy life with them at the same time. It's a fantastic community of people in IT that you get to work with. And the more of those people you meet, the more you have fun at your job, the more opportunities will be available because everybody wants you to work with them. It's just a great great thing to do. And if you're sitting alone and you're not making those relationships, you're doing yourself a disservice from a career perspective.
Sure. Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all your videos and all your content. Good talking to you.
Thanks, Daryl.
Thanks.
Best of luck. That's a good position to be in. If you already know people in the industry, that's a great place to be. I think in my career, I've mentioned this before in the study group, so I apologize for the people that are the people that listen to all of my study groups, like the caller who said he went back over the last couple of years. You get to hear my same stories over and over again. So I do get your emails where you're sick and tired of hearing some of these. Doesn't matter. I'm going to say it again. That I've had in my career about 15 different jobs. And sometimes those jobs were when I moved from one place to another. I went to work for another company. Sometimes I got different positions within the same company. But in IT throughout my career, I've had about 15 different titles in front of my name or after my name. So those different titles, the first job I got was right out of college, had no formal certification or training, and got a job kind of delivering cables at a computer store. Delivering cables, delivering computers, fixing monitors, setting up computers. It was the basic of grunty type of jobs, but it got my foot in the door. Every job I got after that, literally in the next 14 jobs I ever got, I knew someone who worked there. So that gives you a perspective of how nice it is to be able to walk in somewhere and go, oh, yes, I know who that is. I worked with him before, or I worked with her before, or I am in the same user group that they're in. We've done these things together. There's a connection, and the person hiring you may not know you, but if you know that guy, you must be okay. At least there's a connection there. Those are valuable, valuable career connections. And I don't think we sometimes take advantage of that. I don't hear a lot of people mentioning that. We're always focused on what your resume looks like. And that's, of course, important. We're always interested in your certifications. Of course, that's important. We're always interested in your formal education. Of course, those things are important. But don't forget about the people you know and who you can help. You help each other through your careers all the way through. Let's go back to phone calls. Thank you for holding for so long, 240. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
How are you? My name is Zaina. I'm calling from New York City.
Well, thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Yeah. First, I just want to really thank you for your videos. Your videos are amazing.
I'm glad to hear it. Thank you.
This is my first time actually really taking Security Plus seriously. Previously, before I taken a CAP class to get my certification to obtain a job in the cybersecurity world. So now I am, studying Security Plus as well and just doing everything together. But I noticed you really don't have videos for certification for a CAP, and but which is fine. But I know that the Security Plus really is more of a more of advanced actually to really I try to study web with my CAP and then put it together with my Security Plus. So my question is the fact that what is your advice? As far as, for what I'm doing, what kind of strategies or, I'm hearing everybody's different strategies, which is amazing, which is great. But still for me, it's the fact that how can I really group them both together, and how can I really I don't know, I'll just figure maybe what can I do to basically understand this fundamentals more.
And it is. This Security Plus and the perspective it has does go a little bit further than the ISC squared CAP certification does, which is kind of an entry-level part into, and they're both sort of entry-level from that perspective. But one of the things I run into, or one of the things I see, is that there's the same strategy applies to Security Plus as it does, I don't know, practically every other IT certification I run into. Whether I'm studying for a Microsoft certification, a Cisco, a Palo Alto Networks, a CompTIA, it doesn't matter. The strategy for me always seems to be very, very similar, almost the same, is that I need those four things. I need a good book, I need some good videos, I need Q&A, and I need some hands-on. And those are the four pieces that work so well for me to get everything going, to solidify the topics in my mind. The challenge I run into with other certifications other than CompTIA is that the exam objectives from Microsoft and the exam objectives from Cisco and other companies are just very basic. It's a one-page outline. It's not even exam objectives. It's a broad idea of things you should know for the exam. Whereas CompTIA, we're a little spoiled. They spell out for you every single possible thing you could get on your exam, and they really don't tend to go outside the scope of those exam objectives. And I know in the exam objectives, they tell you, we could ask you something not on this list, but in fact, they really don't. They stay very, very close to that set of exam objectives. So if you know everything on that list, that's your checklist. If you know everything on the list, you're going to do fine on the exam. That's where I tell people to focus their efforts with CompTIA. So if you're somebody who, I get questions a lot where people will say, I have a problem studying, I have a problem focusing, I have a problem remembering. Oh, that's okay. Just take one line from the exam objectives. Take one topic, Google that topic, read about that topic in a book, watch the video on that topic, maybe do some hands-on if it applies to that topic, and walk away for a day. It will take you a little longer to get through the topics, but you're going to know them now. You're going to remember them. And as long as you're able to start checking those off, when you're done checking off the topics, you're now ready to take the exam. It is a huge advantage with these exam objectives, and I think a lot of people don't realize just how much of an advantage they get by getting their hands on those.
So my second question for that, because you also talked about hands-on experiences. So for me, if like you talked about this with one of the callers, talking about encryption of sending an email and things like that such. But my computer that I use is a Mac.
Sure.
And all I see of, systems that can be, hands-on experiences is with either a Microsoft, which I don't have. So it's really difficult to find something of a software to, practice with. And if you know any type of software for Mac users, that would be honestly helpful.
Well, I am a Mac user myself. In front of me right now is my iMac Pro. That's what I create all of my courses on. I also, right now, we are streaming using Windows 10. And if you go to my website, you're using Linux. So I use every possible operating system known to man just to get this crazy nonsense to work properly sometimes. This experiment that has escaped from the lab is one that takes a lot of different things to be able to operate. And there's two things, if you're running a Mac, that helps. First, a lot of the tools that we mention dealing with security are tools available on just the native Mac OS. So earlier today, we were talking about being able to send back and forth encrypted messages, being able to use GPG, the GNU Privacy Guard. There is a version of GNU Privacy Guard available for native Mac OS, and there are even some utilities with that can integrate with Mac Mail. It can integrate, there's tools available that can obviously integrate with the web-based, regardless of what operating system you're using. So you can use Google Mail and be able to send encrypted messages built into Google Mail. That functionality was there. The other thing I will tell you is that Microsoft makes their operating systems available to everybody for free as a virtual machine if you are using this in a lab or using this for non-production purposes. The site that does this is modern.ie, modern, as in the modern man. Is not the past, it's modern, modern.ie. And that will redirect you to one of the Microsoft Edge developer sites. This site was created so that people could download a virtual machine, and it's under the tools pull-down menu is the virtual machines link. This was created so that people could test their web-based applications in Microsoft Edge and Internet Explorer. And inside of this, if you're running Mac, you can choose, let's say we want to run Windows 10. I'll just choose their Windows 10 download, and I can run VirtualBox, Vagrant, VMware, Hyper-V, or Parallels. So you can, on your Mac OS, you can install VirtualBox, you can install one of the VMware products, You can run Parallels. If you want to buy one, it's Parallels or the VMware product. If you want to run it for free, just download VirtualBox, which works great on Mac OS. And by running those, you can download the virtual machine from modern.ie, and now you're running in a window on your Mac desktop, the Windows operating system, a fully loaded, fully functional, fully running, working version of Windows that you can now install some of these security apps, test some of the security features of Windows, try different capabilities of Windows, connect Windows to your Mac machine. It's a full-blown Windows machine, as if it was sitting on the desk next to you. So that's where you can also take advantage of some of the free tools available. It doesn't cost you a thing, and Microsoft has made this available for years. This will help anyone who's working on their A+, their Network Plus, or their Security Plus, and you've got a full-blown version of Windows without having to buy a license.
Thank you so much for that. That was really, really helpful.
Well, that should get you going.
Again.
Let us know how that goes. Yeah. With those tools, you should be able to do everything you need to get through any of those security certifications. So best of luck.
Thank you. Bye.
That's something that I'll mention all the time to be able to do that, because it does come in so handy to have that functionality. And I don't think a lot of people know that those particular capabilities are there inside of Microsoft's website, modern.ie, modern.ie. Did I spell it right? I think I did. Let's go back to the phones. 331. Hi, caller. Thanks for calling. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, my name is Bakri, and I'm calling from Chicago.
Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Yeah, during the question and answer, you actually mentioned something that has to do with the watering hole attack. So I think I dropped a question about that on the chat.
Okay, you were asking specifically about which technology?
Yeah, the watering hole attack, the one you said.
Oh, yeah, watering hole, right. So what's your question?
Yes, I'm actually working in a place where, agencies visit government bodies, especially for government websites, especially for information and doing one or two things. So the watering hole kind of broadens my knowledge about some possible vulnerabilities that
hit close to home, did it?
Especially yeah.
Right.
So I just want, what are the things that banks or probably hospitals precautions they can take in order to prevent this, and probably what other attacks are like the watering hole, that banks and hospitals can kind of fall, or that could act as vulnerabilities.
Absolutely.
When they visit such sites.
And so that is, and I think I mentioned some of this in the video, but we don't go into a lot of in-depth details on the video about how to prevent a watering hole attack. There may be something in there. It's been a while since I looked at that video myself. One of the things, though, that people who have these servers that are up and running will do is they have a layered approach to this. They have firewalls on the outside that are scanning the traffic coming through, that are looking for malware as part of those network scans of the network flows that are coming in. If somebody does transfer a file to a server, that file is checked as well. The servers are running antivirus and anti-malware. There are some people, some organizations I know, their servers will run as a cluster. They'll be load balanced across multiple servers, and they will reboot one of the servers in a round-robin fashion every hour, so that they restart with a new image every hour. So they know that the machine can't be, it's brand new every hour. So even if somebody was able to take advantage of that one machine, it's now suddenly cleaned back to where it was an hour from now, that's a pretty obscure and uncommon way to handle this. But I thought that was an interesting thing to mention in this particular context. What a lot of people will do on the server itself, though, is use the technology such as something like file integrity monitoring. So they will have a program that is looking at all of the files, and if any of the files change, it will send you an alert, or it will prevent that file from being changed. A good example of this is Tripwire, which is a piece of software available. It used to be available exclusively on Linux, and I think it's now on many different operating systems. But Tripwire is designed to look at certain files, or maybe all of your files, and if any of those files change, it will then tell you something is wrong, or it will prevent something from making that file change. That's an amazing technology. That way, if somebody wanted to embed malware into a website, they wouldn't be able to change those website pages to be able to do that. So it's yet another layer to block them. They would have to use some other way to inject that code, maybe with a man in the middle, which is much more complicated to get into somebody's network to do. In some cases, not practical. So those are, like anything else in security, it's a layered approach. We always look at security as being a set of layers, and it's never any one thing. It's always a mixture of different things to be able to look for, monitor, analyze, and stop these intrusions.
Okay, thank you so much. And I really want to thank you for your videos and for your notes. It's really helpful, and a lot of people are getting a lot from you.
I appreciate
with this,
that.
Videos.
And
thank you so much.
Thank you. And I appreciate your support of the course notes as well. That does go a long way to keeping all of this craziness going, and making sure we're able to continue to make more videos and make more of these things. So all of you are just as important to keeping this going as me back here trying to get these videos finished and getting them out, as we've done over this last week or so with the A+. It's been a challenge trying to keep up sometimes with all of those, but your support is the one thing I always know. Well, I got to get these videos out because people are waiting to get these certifications. Always happy to do that. Let's go back to the phones, to the 480 area code, West Coast checking in. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Professor Messer. My name's AJ. I actually used to watch your videos about 7 years ago, and kind of wanted to have some tips for your listeners. I kind of started out with an A+ certification, but I had a little bit background with hardware, with working on my own desktop and making it a gaming desktop.
Nice.
And so forth. So I was a little bit ahead of the curve on that part. But when I was getting my certifications, to get a job, because even with an A+, I was having trouble getting my foot in the door, I ended up getting an Oracle certification. And honestly, I didn't really actually learn anything in the certification. I just learned how to pass the test. But that didn't do me any good. So my advice to the listeners is to actually gain an understanding for what you're going to do. Currently, I'm a Linux administrator, starting to go off a little bit in DevOps, trying to pick up Python, to automate different Linux processes or applications. But the way to get here, and it's a constant battle, so you're not going to be just doing one certification. I don't have any certifications besides my A+ in the Oracle, but I would say that certifications do help you get through the door, although you have to demonstrate the ability to understand the task at hand. Even in an interview, when they ask you a question, how you think about solving the problem matters a lot, and being able to communicate that with the interviewer,
It's one of the things that I think a lot of people don't consider, because we're so focused on I need to get the certification because I need to get a job, or I need to get a better job. And we often forget that there's a lot of really good information that we are learning about these technologies in the certification process. And I realize a lot of times we're rushing through it. We got to get through it. I got to get the cert. I got to get on to the next thing. But if you have the time to really take a step back and really understand the information that's in the A+, the Network+, the Security+, the Oracle, the Cisco, the Microsoft, and really do some hands-on, and then to yourself think, what if I did it this way? What would happen? And have the time to lab out those things. It's remarkable just how much you're able to learn from that. And once you learn that, you can really apply it to many different things in your career.
Yeah, and the understanding is so important, because until you understand what an IP address is. You can do a networking class all you want. At the end, you didn't absorb anything, because you're going to need to know that, like the basics of networking before you even start a networking job. And I think the industry is doing something wrong too. They're hyper-focused on somebody who hasn't had a job, and they're expecting 5 years experience from like just somebody who just wants an A+ job. Where I found great employers were the ones that were willing to train, because what they want is they don't want you to learn bad habits from the certification or from even school. Because I've gone to college for it also. I did not graduate, but 9 out of 10 jobs that I've taken, and I've worked at a pretty decent company. Even right now, I'm working for a Fortune 500 company. Every company will tell you that they have a way of doing things, and they want you to be flexible. So to be able to understand that specific company's infrastructure and the way they are laid out, the way the safety and soundness policy works, the way the network policy works, it could be completely different from the one that you worked in before.
Yeah,
right?
I think
So
every
you gotta
place I
have an
ever
open
worked had a
mind.
different change control process.
Yeah, and permissions are going to be a different way to get. In small infrastructure, you just have to ask one person. In an enterprise infrastructure, you have to make a written request that'll go to 10 chains up the manager, and then does your manager know what that access even means?
So true.
So it depends on how big of a company that you're operating in. And don't think that after getting an A+, you'll be ready. I think A+ is just a stepping stone. Absolutely. Like you're competing for A+ jobs that are not hardware based, you're basically competing with jobs in India because a lot of the troubleshooting jobs go there. So my recommendation would be know which side you want to go after an A+. Do you want to go networking? Do you want to go security? You can actually both do those sides. Or you want to go like how I went in operations, which due to DevOps, those jobs are less and less every year, because if you can't automate the job, the companies don't want to hire more people. So
Yep.
there's that slippery slope. So there's certain things to think about, and automation is also in network security now. So you'll be writing scripts there to check. I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm just saying that be ready to climb stairs. Like it's not going to be easy without a degree or, without certifications. They're there to help. But at the end of the day, you got to understand what you're doing. And lab work is great for that.
I have to agree. That is all good advice. I appreciate the call.
Yeah, definitely. You have a good one. And thank you again for being there.
I appreciate it, sir. That's one of the challenges I think I see also is a point you brought up earlier, DJ, was that whenever you are looking for a job, you see these job postings where they want you to be some type of superhero in an entry-level position on a help desk. And if you read through all of the requirements for the job, nobody fits that job. Don't be afraid to submit an application for those. The employer or the person who's the hiring manager recognizes that sometimes the actual job posting does not accurately reflect what they're looking for in these positions. A natural state of large companies sometimes. So don't get too worried that maybe you don't fit an exam or you don't fit a job posting exactly. Go ahead and submit that. And by the way, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier. If you already know somebody who works there, a lot of those requirements are not going to matter as much as you know someone who works there and they know you and they understand how you work. They know you're trustworthy. They know you'll be there on time. They know you'll work hard. Sometimes those things are much more important. It's surprising how much more important they happen to be. Back to phone calls. Let's go to 956. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Oh, wow. I'm so glad I was able to get through. My name is Philip. I'm from Texas.
Welcome, Philip. What can we do for you?
Yes. Well, man, I'm just so happy this call was able to get through. I would like to talk about the test, if that's okay with you.
Oh, sure. Obviously, we can't talk about specifics if you've already taken the test, but we can talk all around that. What questions you have?
Well, I would like to say it's because of you I was able to pass on my first attempt.
Nice. Congratulations.
And thank you so much. And you played a big role in that. I believe your role in my studying for this test, you were able to build a basic guideline of every single objective. You were able to create, like a mental schema, if you will, of how to connect all these, objectives together to use on a situational, example. However, I feel like, go ahead.
No, well, that's kind of what we're trying to do. I kind of build the course that I would like to take if I was taking the certification exam. Sometimes it fits well with a lot of people. Sometimes it doesn't. But there's a lot of options available out there. I just want to give people options when they're studying for their exams.
Right. And to build on that, for example, when I was about to take my test, the guy who took my IDs, the guy who took my picture where I signed in, he says, this test has one of the highest fail rates for first-time takers. And
he told you that going in the door?
Right. But I'm telling you, Mr. Messer, I studied so hard, he didn't even faze me. I was ready to go to war at that test. I've been listening to you for weeks regarding this test, and I always hear a caller saying there's no way I could have studied for it. It was just too much in depth. The questions were too long. It was just, it blew me out the water. I didn't expect the test to be this hard. And I know that's the reason why people claim that it's a high fail rate for first time takers, because they just don't get the depth. They don't really understand to the core what the test wants. And what really helped me understand, what does the test want? What does the test want me to know? How in depth do I have to learn to pass? Was sample questions. I found one guy, he's taken the test so many times that he would kind of write his own questions that kind of mimic what an actual question would be like. And that would if I had to make one recommendation to you, that'd be it. Maybe just throw in one question that could give the actual feel of what they'd want. Really understanding the difference between, the file types for certain certificates.
It's almost like you have to do two different things. You have to know the topics that you're expected to know, everything that's in the exam objectives, but there's a cadence, there's a voice, there's a style to the questions on the exam that you also have to get used to reading through. Some of the questions are relatively involved at the information they're giving to you, even though the answers may be very simple in the answers they're looking to get. But there's some of these questions are you have to almost have a reading comprehension knowledge. So it actually helps. The more you know of the raw material, the easier the exam is going to be, because you're going to be spending a lot of time reading through the questions. It helps if the security part is easy, then the reading part becomes easier as well.
Exactly. I feel like that's what most people stumble upon, is they didn't expect the test to be so far in depth. It really does force you to know every single objective. That is the truth. Print out the CompTIA objectives, learn every single bullet on that list. And I just took it on June 5th, so it's still kind of fresh in my mind. There's over 700 items. Learn every single one of them, because you'll have questions where they'll show you some script and SQL languages, C+ languages, and guess what? You have to know it. You have to know the bare bones of it. They're going to show you a script, and they're going to say, based on this script, what type of attack is this? And I'm pretty sure some of you listening are going to say, holy cow, I didn't think that'd be on the test. It is.
It's in the exam objectives.
Right. It's in the exam objectives that they didn't expect to look at script and say, how am I supposed to know this? I don't know SQL. I don't know what type of attack this is based on the script. It's like they want you to know that. So really study every single point on the objective. And Mr. Messer, I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I just, even though I passed, as soon as I passed, the first thing in my head was I need to give Mr. Messer a call when I can.
I
and
appreciate
thank him.
that. Thank you,
because
Philip.
you painted me a wonderful guideline. Thank you so much. I don't want to take too much of your time because there's other talkers, but thank you so much. And everyone out there, try your best. You'll get it. Real quick, I'm sorry. There was a few weeks ago, a man who was blind called in and saying he was going to take the test, and you were so motivating me. You brought me to tears. I hope you're out there. I hope you're still plugging away. I wish you all the best of luck. Thank you, Mr. Messer, again.
Thanks, Philip. I appreciate the call. And quite honestly, as I mentioned before, I did the easy part. You're the one who had to go out there, take the exam, learn all that material, get it in your head, figure out the details, read days and days and nights and go through it. And I remember that caller as well. I would love to get an update from him to hear how things are going there as well. The real key for me is what you mentioned before, is the exam objectives, the exam objectives, the exam objectives. I just had a situation this past couple of weeks where somebody did come to my chat room on my website and they said, I took the exam and here's a thing I got on the exam and I was not ready for it. And I mentioned, well, that's in the exam objectives. It's pretty plainly mentioned in there. Do you recall seeing that? And they said, what are the exam objectives? This is a story that seems to be, that's why I say every time I do a study group, I'm mentioning that. And I'm sure some of you are just tired of me saying that. And the reason I say that is because you send me emails saying you're tired of hearing me saying it, but I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep saying over and over and over again how important those exam objectives are, because there's still some folks that don't even know they exist. And they are such a valuable tool that I have to make sure everybody is aware of this. It could be the make or break when you sit down for the exam. It is a perfect checklist before you walk in the door. So I can't imagine not having access to those. It just makes sense that you would be able to do that as well. Well, it's been a great study group. We had some fantastic callers. Thank you for your questions in the chat room. Thank you for the questions the callers had and some of the advice they gave to everyone else. Hopefully everybody's able to take some of that to heart. Think about your studies. Think about what you're doing for Security Plus. Make a plan to be able to take that exam, to pass that Security Plus, and move into that job or that next job you've been looking for. Thank you for being here on the study group. We'll see you again next month. Come on back. We do one of these every month. Of course, all of these are archived on the Professor Messer website. You're more than welcome to go there as well and listen to all of that. I appreciate you being here, and I can't wait to do the next one of these. We'll see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group.